everybody, it's Helen Hillix, licensed marriage and family therapist and intuitive coach. And I am here today for this wonderful, exciting summit, Sacred Sexuality Revealed, Passionate Intimacy, Deeper Connections, and Long-Lasting Desire. And I have the pleasure today of having Dr. Erica Goodstone. I'll introduce her a little bit later, but I want to just say a couple of words about why I'm so passionate about this topic. And it's two reasons, really, because I had my own painful sexual history that did not feel like sacred sexuality at all, back in the day of the sexual revolution. And, I engaged in lots of promiscuity. I had abortions. All the horrible things that you can think of associated with sexuality, abuse, and so forth. And that carried with me a great deal of shame. And of course, concurrent with the sexual revolution was the puritanical teachings that you shouldn't be having sex at all. So it created tremendous conflict for our whole society, not just for me. And then the second part is that I became a licensed therapist and have worked for 35 years with many, many clients who have struggled with their sexuality and trying to find more fulfilling, sacred kind of sexuality. So I feel tremendous passion about it, having discovered it for myself and teaching it to my clients. So that's why I'm doing this, and I hope you all benefit tremendously from it. So let me dive into Dr. Erica Goodstone. She's a healing through love mentor. I love that. I love that moniker, healing through love mentor and relationship healer. She helps men and women, individuals and couples, gay and heterosexual, heal their bodies and their relationships through love. Dr. Erica helps her clients create and reawaken their love, sexual passion, and intimate connection. She is also a licensed mental health counselor and marriage therapist, board certified sex therapist on the faculty of the International Institute for Clinical Sexology, somatic body psychotherapist, personal life and health wellness coach, and her Healing Through Love audio series, her Love Touch Heal video and book series, and her Love Transforming Love Lessons for Your Soul, in addition to her 6 powerful virtual summits, will change the way you view love and relationships. And you can connect to her through drericagoodstone.com. I'm not going to talk more about her, even though obviously I could talk about all of her qualifications forever. I've seldom interviewed somebody who had more certifications behind their name. So anyway, welcome. And do you want me to call you Erica or Dr. Goodstone or?
Whatever's comfortable.
Okay, I'll call you Erica. Because I feel like that's more personal, and I want to be connected. I love the metaphor of these interviews because they are sacred sexuality in a generic way. We are diving deep together through our connection. So that triggers me to say, welcome, Erica, and dive in and tell us, how do you define sacred sexuality?
Before I say that, I want to add that we were just talking about a metaphor. We're going to be talking about blocks in a moment, what blocks sexuality. And here we're about to do an interview, and there's drilling in the background. And they're drilling an apartment near my apartment, and I can't do anything about it.
I love that. I love that metaphor because it does reflect real life, doesn't it? That we get to try and learn how to be in the present moment in our connection with all the noise of life in the background. That's a great metaphor.
You said that well. So what is sacred sexuality? Well, it reveals to us that our life force and our sexual energy come from the same source. We think our sexual energy and our desire for sexuality is something separate and different, and only we feel it. But we're all interconnected, and it all comes from the same place. It's all energy. And it's an expression, when it's really sacred, it's an expression of awe and wonder, and people feel it in any culture. This is not just a certain group that feels it. When you feel that personal connection beyond who I am and who you are, you become all women, all men, you become something universal, and it's very powerful. It's just honoring yourself as a spiritual being that's inhabiting a body rather than a body who's just performing something. And you also honor the other person's spirituality. And you're really aware of the feminine and the masculine, and not necessarily by gender, just by the energies.
You know, I mean, we could spend the entire hour talking just about your definition of sacred sexuality. I resonate so deeply with it. Can you talk about what if people don't think of themselves as spiritual? How is it still true, and how can they conceptualize it without bumping into their definition?
What I immediately want to say is that anyone who feels like they're not spiritual, if they're about to drown, or if they have a gun pointed at them, or something really serious, I'm pretty sure they would ask for God's help. There's something that just happens when you're at the edge of life. So a lot of people have suffered more maybe, and they're more aware of their spirituality because they've had to face it. Like I remember a client who came to me who had all kinds of issues going on, and he said, I could not have planned this. He knew there was some higher power, some higher force. And if you don't want to call it God, there's an energy, and we are all interconnected. The internet is showing us that more and more, but people resist. But there really is, whether you believe it or not, the science is indicating it. They talk about quantum science is really talking about that, how molecules change. They change from waves into particles. And by observing it, the particles change into waves. So that's just by observing, by somebody observing it. So there's a lot that we don't have to know. It's just something that I believe is.
I agree with that also. And something that I say to my clients is, you know, you may not even consciously believe in a power greater than ourselves, but you know, you can even just think of yourself as part of nature. You know, we're all made up of the same energy, and that's what you're talking about, right? With the quantum physics, is that science is proving that we actually are all made up of the same building blocks, and therefore for people who really don't want to think of God or a spiritual self, they can think of themselves in that way, that there still is something beyond my skin.
And we think of our body as matter, as a solid thing, and it's not solid. It's made out of atoms and molecules and quarks or whatever else exists. And we are electrical. We're electromagnetic beings. Our heart has 5,000 times the magnetism of our brain, and our gut has neurons that are connected energetically, and they send signals to the brain. We have all these signals, electrical signals, and we're, I don't know what percent, 90, 95% water.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're not just these physical bodies. We're much more and beyond.
I think, you know, you're talking about all these scientific realities that confirm that we are not just our bodies. And how do you feel, Erica, about do you think that it's that reality that people are missing, or that they're longing for when they are saying, I don't feel fulfilled sexually, or I don't know how to have sacred sexuality? Is it that awareness of the oneness?
I would say that great poets, I know I have seen some, I can't think at the moment of a particular one, but poets and philosophers have revealed that for centuries, that sense that people are longing for that connection. and they think they're going to get it by making more money, by having a better house, by finding a better partner, by having lots of friends. And I see that all around me, people wanting to have lots of friends and want their partner to be the best and do everything right and get the gifts when they're supposed to. And somehow, when you attain all of that, you still realize that's not it. The Beatles discovered that, and they went to study with the Swamis. Many very highly successful people realize, like the song, "Is that all there is?" They have a sense there's something more. And as we age, if we start doing a lot of self-reflection, that's what it requires, self-reflection, then we start to realize this. A lot of people, as you get older, friends of yours that you counted on may pass away, or they may get ill. And that teaches, what is this all about? Why wasn't I kinder to that friend? And why didn't I understand them more? You think that way after someone is not there. So that's why I love the topic of this summit, sacred sexuality. It's honoring that sense that we are all interconnected. And if we think that way, our loving partners can feel loved, and we will feel loved much more.
Yeah, feel like the pain of humanity is that whole experience you were just talking about, of the feeling of separateness, that no matter how much money or fame or friends or whatever that we have, it's still that essential longing for that connection.
And one of the things that I wanted to share at some point was that we think of sacred sexuality only with an intimate partner that you've been with for years, that you love. But I've personally had that experience. I also grew up during that sexual revolution. And I had an experience of lots of sacred sexuality, especially when it's not someone that you're going to be with ongoing. So that's why when people have an affair, sometimes that could be the sacred sexuality, because they open up, they reveal whatever sexuality, kinks, or interests they have, and the other person accepts it, at least for the moment. The other person might not really accept it long term, and their partner might not accept it long term, whatever it is. Wanting a lot of touch, it doesn't have to be a kinky thing. It could just be whatever it is that you love that your partner may not love. But with a stranger or once in a while person, you can explore who you are. And sacred sexuality comes down to being who you are, allowing the other person to be who they are. And as you do that, you can't help feeling that spirituality starts to just be aroused. If you talk about it from the chakras, it's like you're raising it from the lowest chakra. The lowest is safety and security. The second one is the sexuality chakra, where the sexual energy comes from, creativity, birth. But by being intimate with someone in a sacred way, it raises it up to the third eye, and you're connecting with something more.
You know, it's very interesting to hear you talking about that. I have had clients also who were surprised to find a sacred element with someone in a short-term connection. But I think you're so right. Sometimes people feel safer with someone, that's not a long-term partner, because they feel free to be their authentic selves.
And another piece there, that when they choose a partner, this can be so frustrating. I've had a few women come to me whose partner chose somebody from a lower class and somebody not as educated, not as beautiful, whatever. But that also can be something that allows you to be fully sexual, fully free, because you don't feel judged. You don't feel like you're supposed to do it a certain way. Like you could really love your intimate partner and be so impressed with them, but also threatened by them. And not because they're threatening, just because you feel like I'm not as good, or I have to prove myself all the time. It might not be anything your partner has done, just how they're viewing you. And then for them to be with someone lesser in some way, in the worldly way, they're not as wealthy, not as beautiful, or much younger, that can make the person feel safer. So it's complicated.
It is complicated, and you're diving into the second question I had for you about, what are some of the blocks of sacred sexuality, and I think you've already, expressed several of them, but one of them that really catches my ear is comparisons.
Oh, absolutely.
That, I'm not as pretty as, or I'm not as smart as, or I'm not as thin as, or whatever it is that.
But what it really is, and I haven't put this into words until now, what it really is that the other person somehow brought, if you say your husband is cheating on you with a younger woman, something about that younger woman brought out his sacred sexuality, and you were not able to bring that out. That's a quality that may be underlying all of that stuff about comparing yourself. It's not because the other person's more beautiful or richer or smarter. It's something else. And you feel like you've lost that closeness. But sometimes, even though that has happened, because I'm saying the man, but it could be the woman that did this. I have had women that had affairs too. And sometimes that affair with that person who opened up the sacred sexuality, the partner could bring it back into the marriage and be more open, and then help his spouse to open up if they go for some kind of counseling and they're willing, and the partner's really willing to forgive, which is a big one. It's very hard to forgive when you feel that you've been betrayed and everything you believed about your relationship isn't true, but that's not true. What you believed about it was true. There was a lot that was good, whatever you felt. And there's a piece that this person needed something more. And it's funny that I wasn't expecting to say this. It's what's coming out of the conversation.
Yeah, well, it's, and I hadn't planned on talking about infidelity, but I do think if you're going to ask the question of, what blocks sacred sexuality, that's certainly one of the things that blocks sacred sexuality. And, I'd like to throw in pornography here too, is that, a lot of people, especially, it occurs in men watching pornography and women feeling betrayed by it. It's kind of that same energy of, they're getting something somewhere else that they're not getting from me.
Absolutely. But there's another piece there, that with pornography, that's part of what I was talking about, that they feel freer because they don't have to do anything. A lot of men, most of the time when men come in for some kind of sexual issues, they talk about performance. I didn't perform well, so they feel like they have to do something, and then they know that the woman needs certain touch and certain things, and maybe they like doing it, maybe they don't. They're not as aroused as they could be. When they watch pornography, they don't have to do anything. They just turn on the screen and they can just be themselves, and nobody is judging or watching. And the same thing, even more so, happens when they go to strip clubs. Because at a strip club, natural dancing place, or exotic dancing place, it's a business, and the women there come to the man, flatter him. They treat the man like he's so special, no matter how old or fat or unattractive he is. So it's very appealing. They don't have to do anything. And
it's not just that they don't have to do anything. This, I don't know, I could go off on a rant about this, but our whole culture promotes instant gratification and superficial ego puffing. It's like the national pastime. That's what you're talking about, is they don't have to do anything. It's like the artificial reality that pornography or strip clubs or prostitution, all of those things create an artificial reality that is the antithesis of sacred sexuality. In my mind, it's like, it's so sad because it makes people believe that that's the way it could be in a real connection, which of course it cannot be, because we each have feelings.
No, it can be in a real connection. You can have all those feelings. Dr. Peggy Kleinplatz did this amazing research study about peak sexual experiences. And what's involved in that is really being yourself, allowing the other person to really be themselves.
Absolutely.
Revealing your fears, your whatever your worst fears are, and revealing your desires, even if they're not something the partner really wants, and then being vulnerable. So it's this sense of jumping off a cliff together.
I completely agree with that.
But how many couples can do that?
Well, that was my point, Erica, is that it doesn't happen the way it happens in pornography, strip clubs, or prostitution, because there are two people. In those other situations, there's only me and my desires and my gratification. But in reality, it's the ability to support that authenticity in both partners.
And couples can do that. I mean, many couples do.
Yes.
Yes,
but I love your
in that study. But the fact is that people are afraid of that. The partner gets to know them too well, and the partner also knows them well and criticizes and judges. If we all were trained to love more, that's where love comes in, how to love, and I teach about how to love, all the many aspects of loving, then we can bring that out in a partner, and we can feel safe when it goes back and forth.
This is such, again, it's such a powerful conversation, because, what we're talking about is, I love how you said it's jumping off the cliff together. Sacred sexuality requires that incredible, vulnerable exposure to your partner of everything about you that you fantasize about having sex with your sister, that you want to spank her or, tie her up or whatever it is.
And being accepted, not having a judgment. The problem we have is maybe in the moment the partner will accept it, but later they'll remember what you said and throw it at you. And I hear couples do that all the time. That's where the problem is, to allow the openness and not to throw it back at the person.
This is so important. I just feel, I feel a lot of energy physically in my body right now talking about this. This is why I'm doing this summit, is to change the conversation, in our society. Because, the reason people judge one another is they're afraid that something's wrong. Something's bad about that.
And
that's
also,
what we're taught.
And also, if our partner doesn't look as good as the images that we think they're supposed to look like, especially if they get a little older, they gain weight, they have surgery, whatever it is, we think that's a reflection on me. My partner doesn't look good. That means that, I don't have what I'm supposed to have. I deserve better. Instead of feeling the love that you could feel for your partner as a fellow human being on this path, sharing the path with you, the sacred path of being together.
I love that, the sacred path of being together. Our society does not value that. And I want to emphasize that again, because it's not your fault if you judge your husband or your wife, that he doesn't look this way or she doesn't look that way. It's not your fault. You have been raised in a society that values a particular superficial appearance. And it's all about how the ego dominates everything.
Mm-hmm.
and blocks us. We're still on the blocks conversation, and blocks us from having our true heart's desire, which is what you were saying, Erica, that the journey of love together.
I I know. It's like my book was Love Me, Touch Me, Heal Me, The Path to Physical, Emotional, Sexual, and Spiritual Reawakening. But I did not say the journey together. And you just put those words into my head. And I'm going to think about that a lot because that's what it is, a life path journey. And I have a friend who I know from 30 years ago, and she has some physical ailments, and I have some. And she left a message on my phone saying, I'm so happy to be reconnected with you. We connected a few times in the last month, and we'll follow each other on this path. We're on this path together. And so it's even with friendship.
It's so true, Erica. It makes me want to cry, because it's only been in the last while for myself as a 70-year-old woman married to somebody that, I feel challenged. I'm not unusual in that, everybody feels challenged to be on that path together. But it has occurred to me so many times recently that the greatest gift we can give is to share our lives with someone. I mean, how precious is that I'm sharing my life and he's sharing his life with me, and that we have each other's backs, and that, we're never going to be alone. And it's like, that's, if we can kind of pare it all down, isn't that what we all are longing for? But we haven't been taught how to have it. So let's switch. Let's
and how to appreciate it.
Exactly, and how to value it, even to identify that is the real feeling that we're looking for. And that is sacred sexuality, whether it's with a friend or a lover. It's like, it's that generic feeling of deep, deep connection and safety that we're all longing for. So even when we think we're longing for a genital orgasm, it's really, we're longing for that feeling of oneness. So let's hop into the solution. And, the first thing I want to ask you, because you're a specialist in this, is what does touch have to do with sacred sexuality?
Well, there's one gene that can only be turned on through gentle touch. And touch is powerful. What do you think sexuality is all about? You're touching your partner, but people touch in many different ways. They can touch aggressively, if you're touching aggressively, just try to move yourself that way right now. You go like that, your stomach kind of tightens, you're doing something and you're trying to get something, or you touch someone when you're rubbing or you're grabbing, like these cute little videos years ago where they showed a husband in the kitchen grabbing his wife's tush. It's grabbing, it's cute, but it's not turning you on. It's not sensual. It's not opening your pores. Gentle touch is what does it. And it isn't just touching gently, because that can be irritating. I don't mean like surface gentle touch. That can be annoying. It's touching another person where you're touching their skin and you're feeling and you're paying attention and you're touching like in sensate focus, which Masters and Johnson, who created sex therapy, they taught about sensate focus. And when you do sensate focus, you're touching to feel, what does the skin feel like? What's the temperature? Is there resistance from the other person? You can do that on yourself and not just with another person. We don't even touch ourselves. We really think that we need a partner, but sacred sexuality can be with your own self.
Yes.
Loving your body. And that can mean, because I'm recently very conscious of health and health issues, that can mean not just following a doctor's prescriptions or an herbalist prescriptions or a massage therapist prescriptions, paying attention to your own body. What is my body telling me? And then in terms of health, what will help me? Like really tuning in to your own self. And the more that you tune into your own self and love touching yourself, and you're open to touch, then you can share that with a partner. And what I've done with couples is one person is on the massage table, they don't get undressed, just take shoes off, and the partner is assisting. So like I'm holding the person's head, and the partner is at their feet. And I have had a partner in the middle of this kiss the feet or kiss the forehead, because the person is on the table opening up, telling the truth, because it's coming from, they're in a relaxed state. I'm doing the body work that opens them up and lets the body down. And then they reveal some truth that happened in their family. And the partner starts to see whatever they were reacting to so much really doesn't have to do with him or her. It comes from way back, and they get it. And then there's such a closeness. So I've experienced that closeness.
You know, again, you've got so many deep insights that we could take off on, but I do want to comment on that, because that to me is one of the most powerful blocks to sacred sexuality, and one of the most powerful solutions is to look at our reactivity and realize that what the person is saying, if it's hurtful or whatever, it's not about you. It comes from some deep pain that happened to them in their childhood or whatever. And once you understand that, it's like, oh, you know, and your reaction to their hurtful comment also comes from some deep pain in your childhood, because otherwise you would just say, wow, that doesn't sound like Richard or whatever. That doesn't sound like him. That must be coming from some other place. But his reactivity comes from some pain, and my reactivity comes from some pain.
And to add to that, we react not in the middle of the sexuality. It's happening at other times.
All the time.
On the phone or wherever you are. So you've reacted to that. You haven't resolved it. You're just pissed off. You might react, but you're not understanding where it's coming from. And then you get into a sexual situation. You think, I'm going to just be free, but you're not. You're still resenting. And that's okay at the beginning of a relationship. You can get over it usually, but it builds over time. But the opposite can build over time. That's why Dr. John Gottman says, you know, you have to have 5 positive statements for every negative statement. You know, you're building a house, a safe house for your relationship. So the relationship has to feel safe. When you feel safe with yourself or with another, then you can be open to sacred sexuality.
And, you know, I don't know if you would agree with this, but in my exploration with people, it's like even the things that they like that their partner may not like, there is usually a deep reason why they like that particular thing. It's, for instance, if a guy likes to have a woman perform oral sex for him, and he doesn't really like a lot of other kinds of sexual experience, so often it comes from a deep place of needing to be loved or needing to be feeling safe, that whatever it is, you know, whatever
or being
preferences.
Teased by or criticized by the first person he had sex with.
Of course,
anything.
Exactly. It could be anything. But if we shift, I mean, in terms of solutions to how do we have sacred sexuality, I think, you know, your example of how does touch connect, and then that example of reactivity and understanding it deeply. If we can be in the inquiry with our partner about, I wonder why this or that. I mean, it's like...
But in order to be in that inquiry with our partner, we need support somewhere, because our partners are not always the easiest. They're usually the most difficult because we choose someone to work out some of our own childhood issues, and we choose just the right person. That's who we fall in love with. So it's not easy with that person. That's where friends come in, and therapists and coaches, to get another perspective about who I am. So if I feel like I'm a goddess and I'm beautiful and I'm a gift, then I can offer my gift of love and be more loving toward this person who's not behaving perfectly. Like my husband certainly doesn't say the right things and do the right things very often. But when I'm coming from the right space, I'm not even bothered. I really understand it.
I love that. And that's the freedom to love, isn't it? So that's the next question is, what does love have to do with sacred sexuality?
All right. Well, we already talked about how these affairs can feel like love and feel like sacred sexuality. Love is just a powerful word that people really don't understand. I teach a course, 30 Love Lessons for Your Soul, and the reason I did it, it was really inspired from all these years of studying so many things. And I talk about the brain, how the brain affects your life. You have billions of bits of information every second. And if you're in a traumatized situation, it's even 10 times that. Bits of information coming at your brain. And then your hormones get triggered. And each hormone does something else. And then, I could go on. And you have your own family history and all of that. So that love is really loving yourself. I mean, I've heard that, but just to say that doesn't mean anything. It's really learning all about yourself, doing research on yourself, finding out how much in every circumstance with another person, how much input did I have into this? How did I affect this? And I've heard so often that someone, yes, they saw something that they didn't like, but they didn't speak up at the moment. So it happened again, and they didn't do their part or whatever. And sometimes there's nothing that they did, but love is a beautiful thing. And then there's this rabbi, Dr. Shmuley Boteach, who talks about kosher adultery. And I love that because most people talk about love, that you should communicate and be really open and be like an open book. And then you get turned on to someone who's different, who's exciting, who you do something different and new with. And that's where creating novelty with your partner is very, very important. So learning something new together, going to new places, enjoying new activities. So, and even in the sexuality, something new. I've had so many people talk about it that, just monotonous what they do. And it doesn't have to be. And I'm not even talking about intercourse. It's just doing different adorable things, like someone would kiss me on the neck and it was such a turn on. Do that with your partner. A little simple thing that they'll suddenly feel, nice again.
I love what you're saying about, again, the inclusion of your whole life as a contribution to what makes love. It's not because so many people say, my sex life is boring. I need to buy a new toy. I need to get into kink. I need to buy a sexy outfit. When it isn't necessary, I'm not saying you shouldn't do any of that, but it's the whole, so many people feel bored in their lives. And that comes into the bedroom.
And you just brought up something which I had not thought of it that way exactly, that many people probably experience sacred sexuality through the S&M, through that kind of kinkiness, because they're brought to the edge. They have rules. They set up rules for it. They're brought to the edge of pain or of whatever their edge is, and they're totally free. That's why women very often have a fantasy, even though we don't always talk about it. There were books that were written, mostly in the 70s, about women's fantasies. And they would fantasize being raped and fantasize a gangbang. It's not that they really want that, but it's the sense that if I have no control, I can let go and I can just be me. I didn't do anything wrong. God's not going to punish me. I can't help it,
Well, and I think it also opens the possibility. Let's say someone does have a fantasy of something extreme, allowing them to let go. I mean, I had a client once who had never had an orgasm until she was raped. it by someone who climbed in the window and blindfolded her. I mean, it was a serial rapist in Coronado years ago. And, she felt so much shame about that. But the reality was that she was able to there was nothing she could do. There was nothing she could do. And this wasn't, she knew of the rapist and that he wasn't a person that was going to hurt their subjects. So she wasn't afraid that he was going to kill her or anything. And it's just that same thing. It's like whatever, if we can allow ourselves then to extrapolate from that fantasy to, okay, how can I let go? What does that fantasy tell me about myself that can contribute to my whole life feeling more free? Because I think people get hung up on, I can only let go in bed if I'm doing BDSM, and that's the only place I need to let go.
Well, that's the only place that they've been able to in the past. So this is where love and really exploring their own inner self can make a difference for people, all kinds of people, no matter what your situation is, to think outside the box that you've been in.
And feel liberated from that box however it happens, whether it's through having an affair. That I wanted to comment on that, of how an affair can actually end up being a tremendous contribution to a marriage is what you were alluding to earlier, is if we're willing to see that, this was just more information.
And it was not about me that I'm not good enough. It was about him or her needing to feel something that they weren't feeling.
Exactly.
And I may not have caused that. It could be their childhood and they haven't been feeling it all their life and somehow they needed that. It's complicated.
Well,
so
you didn't cause that.
I
mean, I think that's really important, is you didn't cause that person to feel that way. Even if you're a very rejecting person and they felt rejected, you still didn't cause it, because they felt they were triggered by your rejection, rather than being able to say, I wonder why you feel the need to reject. Let's get some help about that. If they didn't carry some wound about it themselves, right?
Well, the other part is that we're human and our brains get affected by our interaction. I've watched videos of mothers and infants, and when the mother is not paying attention, the infant can get crazy, and if she goes away, the infant gets depressed. But this goes on our whole lives, that our brains are affected. So we can't be these perfect therapists with our partner. We need outside help to be able to do that. It doesn't have to be a therapist. It could be a friend, but you need support that I'm okay, I love myself, I'm a gift, and then this is happening, I don't like this, and in that attitude, now I'm curious, but I need that support.
I completely agree. We all need support in order to be centered enough to not take things personally, which is
because we try to think that you could just do it all alone. I can support myself, but your brain is getting entrained with this other person, so you can't. You're getting affected. Look at any couple that's been together, and you know that they're affecting each other.
We only have a few more minutes, and I definitely want to specifically focus on the last thing you and I talked about, which is how to co-create a long-term relationship that includes sacred sexuality. How do you make it that feeling last? And I think you've sprinkled our whole talk with suggestions about that. But is there anything you want to add?
What I would say is to make a study of love. Like, I've been looking into healing and I'm studying it. I'm taking a course on herbal medicine for current epidemics, and I'm studying a green smoothie girl. I'm just taking a lot of things. People don't do that about love. They just want a quick fix. Study about love, take a training in love, learn about love, all the many different aspects, how you feel about money and how that affects love, how you feel about your body, how you feel about aging. There's so much that you can learn about love. Also, if your sexuality isn't going so well, take some sessions in touching. Either receive different kinds, not just massage and not just acupuncture, because acupuncture is needles and you're not learning to connect through that. It's good for healing in different ways, but really take some courses in it. Study about touch, study about love. Just like if you want to go dancing with your partner, you take dancing lessons very often. So create novelty is another very important thing. Do some different things together and really start to understand. My favorite is from Neil Donald Walsh in Conversations with God when he says, "What would love do now?" And I always add, what would love do now for me? But not just for me right now. So if you're in a relationship and somebody's being nasty, and if you ask yourself, what would love do now? Would you automatically scream back at the person? Or would you think the best thing that I could do for this relationship long term is to step back, maybe say, I'm going to talk to you later. I don't like what you're doing right now. Walk away and then discuss it later and not scream back and do all of that because you're thinking of the long term. What would love do for the relationship?
I like that so much. And I feel like all of those suggestions, make a journey out of love, learn about love and the novelty, adding novelty and learning to deal with your reactivity, so much about making it long lasting. And you were talking about learn about all different kinds of touch. I mean, the feeling that I get when you're talking is expanding your definition of what is love, what is sexuality. As you age, especially, it's like it doesn't have to, and it doesn't matter if you're young too, if you can get beyond that genital, some people say friction plus fantasy or pieces and parts.
I like that.
You're talking about expanding that.
And I have spoken to several people. One was a woman who came up to me at a conference, and one is a man that I interviewed on my radio show. And both of them talked about how they had the best sexuality with their partner, and the man was impotent. It was through touch and through that sensuality that they both felt, and they weren't partners with each other, totally separate situations.
I love that. I just love that. And I think that I talk about healing the blocks to sacred sexuality. It's just like part of the essence of what heals is to keep growing. Okay, I have loved this conversation. I want you to, is there any final word that you want to say to the audience, and then tell us about your free gift and how to connect to you?
Just love yourself and love the other people in your life. And we have all seen from all these disasters around the world that that person could be gone in a moment. And if you live your life valuing your connections, and if anybody's not nice to you in some way, yes, you react, you can't help it, but then take a look at it and say, I wonder what's going on. Ask this. I wonder what's going on in that person's mind that they have to feel that they have to be nasty. And that can change your whole attitude. Send them more love, more than you think they deserve or need. That's the other part, to send more love to people, even if you feel they don't deserve it. Send your energy. That's a whole other study that's been going on, that the energy of love is a higher frequency. And when you're operating from that higher frequency, you have an effect on the people and the world around you.
I love that. You can make a difference, not just in your bedroom, but in the whole world by energizing love. Okay, so tell us about your free gift, Erica, and how people can connect to you.
This is a gift, Sexual Reawakening, a video that I did a while ago, and it just explains sexuality, so it's simple. What we've talked about today is expanding on that. And You can reach me at drericagoodstone.com, and you can sign up for a free session. I'd love to talk with you.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you so much, Dr. Erica Goodstone, for being with us today. I know you're busy, and I really value the contribution that you're making to our audience. I know they're going to love you, and I would love to hear from the audience always. You know, I want feedback about the series, about what you liked, about what you thought we could improve on, because we are always expanding ourselves too. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you for all the work you do to help expand love in the world.
Thank you.